Okay, so if you watched our previous video or any of our previous videos, you'll know that I am recovering from a hip stress fracture. In the last video that featured me, I had my MRI update. We saw some good progress, still more progress to be had, but ultimately positive. And with that, I have decided to head out to Austria and train at the Red Bull Performance Center that is based there, basically starting my rehab journey and also diving more into why this injury happened. And that is what this video is going to cover, us kind of diving more and finding out more about why this injury happened and how we're going to fix it.
Walking away, thinking it over, holding the weight of your words. Well, you can sharpen the blade, but I'm already open, spilled it all. I know.
All the cutest cups in the whole world. Look at this little one. Wow. Oh, it's a joke.
And I'm rising from the wreckage. No, I haven't been in the best place.
So one of the first things we looked at in Austria was actually my biomechanics. So we looked at some old footage of me running, and I allowed the experts there to just kind of break every part down of my run and really look at it, and they discovered some crucial things in my running biomechanics that are so likely to have caused this injury that it was always going to happen, basically. Like, as soon as I would ramp up my run volume, the way I run, my biomechanics would put so much stress onto my left hip.
Because I guess as well, it's going more through that heel, so it's ramming up the leg. Yeah.
Look, what's the right side?
Yeah.
It's like three things happen. Your hips dropping, your knee comes in, and then you get a little bit of internal rotation.
Yeah. And even when you sit and do that, you can feel that pulse.
Yeah,
it kind of explains why I've had issues in my left hip before. Never as extreme as this, but it would explain why injuries and niggles keep happening in my left hip. So we have dived into my run footage and kind of broken down how I'm running and why this injury happens. And basically, it was always going to happen, and it could happen at any point in the future if I do not correct some things around my biomechanics and my strength exercises. So a pretty crucial thing was discovered whilst we were in Austria. Yeah, so we obviously looked at my biomechanics, but we also looked just at me in general. And there's a few things from being a swimmer for years and years that would have contributed. The first one being that I'm very tight through my thoracic and I have slight scoliosis of my spine. Could have been born with it, but we think it's quite unlikely. We think it's more likely that from around the age of 16 to now, I've only breathed to one side when I swim. Should have listened to a swimming coach I had when I was a bit younger who said, must breathe to both sides. If I'd listened, I would be a more balanced athlete and wouldn't have so many imbalances. And basically, where I have only breathed to one side, my body wants to twist to that way. So actually, when I run, there's a slight twist in my upper body. Now, that probably wasn't one of the worst things we discovered, but the second one is that actually when I run, my left foot actually rolls in. My right one lands quite nicely, but my left foot rolls in, which in turn makes my knee twist and roll in and my hip twist and roll in. And I'm not absorbing force very well on that left side. That means that the force, rather than being absorbed through my feet and quite nicely dissipated, it's actually just going straight up my leg into my hip and just pounding that hip every single stride. So basically, after a while my hip's not going to stand a chance because the mileage I'm doing as an endurance athlete is fairly high. If you've got something that's constantly pounding away, eventually it's just going to break. So that is what happened with my hip. It's not going to be a case of me correcting this running. I've got to correct this in the gym, and then my strength and ways that I've strengthened my body will mean I won't run like that anymore. It's not really going to be a technical running type of recovery. It's actually going to be more done in the gym, which is good news because it means I can start now before I even get back to running, and I almost get a head start. So it's really cool that we've discovered it. And ultimately, it's not just going to prevent me having injuries in the future, but it's going to make me a stronger, more efficient runner. So I should be faster. So really cool to discover that.
I'm a globetrotter. You and I 비교나 하지 마. 우리 너무 달라. We just different. 나 좀 봐라. 여자나 집이나 세차 나가신다. 너무 빨라. I'm a globetrotter. You and I 비교나 하지 마. 우리 너무 달라. We just different. 나 좀 봐라. 여자나 집이나 세차 나가신다. 너무 빨라. I'm a globetrotter.
So as well as looking at old run footage, we also did like a walking analysis. So obviously at the moment I can't run, so we can't do a running analysis at this point, but we can do a walking analysis and also functional body movement analysis and looking at the way that my body moves. So there's, even when I'm walking, a lot of drop in my hip, so they're not staying nice and level. There's quite a big drop, particularly through that left side, which would cause stress on the left side. And a lot of that just confirmed what we were seeing looking at the old run footage. And these specialists have seen this a lot with other athletes, not necessarily exactly the same thing, but they're so in tune with looking at top elite athletes doing their sport and kind of nitpicking things that may be causing issues. So biomechanically, we were pretty certain that this would have had a big cause on the injury. We also did some other tests whilst I was at the APC, so basic blood testing, looking at my heart, lungs, and other muscle function, and all of those were really, really good. So we can rule out that there's anything sinister going on. Like, I have all the ingredients to be a top level athlete, which kind of makes sense. And if there was things going wrong, we probably would know by now.
Oh my God.
That's the size it should be if you have a very big heart. How tall are you?
5'7", 170 centimeters.
Because if you have a big heart, like your husband did, it's over 56
Okay.
millimeters and you're 51. That's completely normal. That's good.
The bloods all came back good as well, so that can rule out that there's anything wrong nutrition-wise. Also speaking with the nutritional expert there, there's nothing that I'm doing wrong, so this isn't a nutritional issue. That isn't to say that people who get this injury, it could be caused by a nutritional issue, but in my case, it is more down to biomechanics than anything else. So now that we know all of this, it is just a case of doing some very specific gym work. So looking at strengthening my feet and ankle stability so that it doesn't allow my foot to roll in, particularly on that left side when I run. Starting to build up some good hip and glute strength in a safe way without putting too much strain on that left hip. Also doing some different kinds of training that can start to build muscle again without putting too much load through the hip. So at the moment, a lot of the gym training that I'm doing is based around core strength, glute strength and stability, and ankle and foot strength and stability. So I would call it more prehab, rehab work than actual gym work like I would normally do. But at the same time, it just feels good to be doing something, and arguably it is actually really hard, so it still feels like I'm getting a really good workout. And it's just nice to actually train with someone looking at what you're doing the whole time and making sure you're doing something right. And I'm in the best hands at the Red Bull Performance Centre because these people are just experts in their field, work with elite athletes every single day. So it's good to have a second set of eyes looking at what I'm doing and assessing every single thing that I'm doing.
1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 for the ones still hating on the low, 4 for the ladies, more for the bros. We about to split the profit, gon' get some more. Yeah, this That's how it go. Yeah. That's how it go. Yeah, that's how it go. Yeah. That's how it go. Yeah, that's how it go. Darling, devil, I'm about to run it up. Get in trouble, that's what I gotta do to make a buck. Ain't no risk without rewards, need my mileage cover. Putting more points up on the board, wanna check the score, you're so great. Yeah, that's what they tell me, I ain't running with the fake. Only keep it real around me, I ain't what you ain't. You should get your weight up. Beef all in my diet, I've been going for the games.
So some of the exercises, actually, when one of the specialists would demonstrate it, it looks like it's gonna be super easy, but actually it's so difficult, and some of them are such small, tiny little movements to activate those small muscles that actually, if those muscles don't work, there's no point in having your big muscles being super strong if the little functional ones don't work. So really eye-opening just to see that these small muscles make such a difference. So even in terms of like strengthening my underarch and foot to prevent my foot from rolling in, it makes complete sense, because I could have the strongest quad hamstring in the world, but if my foot's rolling in, that makes no difference. So a lot of them are very, very small muscles. And even with working, say, the glute and hip stability, I would say that I've got very strong glutes, but that's kind of the big muscle. We're not looking at the smaller muscles that actually do stabilize the body when you run, and they're the ones that I'm working on. So everything that I was doing made complete sense. And when that muscle started to ache, he was like, oh, I don't feel like I've ever felt that muscle ache before. So it's just fine-tuning what that strength and conditioning looks like at this stage. I mean, yes, I want to be strong, so in the future, basic lifting will come back, but I'm not at a point where I can do that yet without putting my hip at risk. So it's just really stripping it back and almost starting from the very beginning again, and that's almost what I'm doing. Like I'm learning to run before I can run, in a way, and when I go back to running, it will be from the very basic up again. So it's something I've never done. Like, I came into triathlon not late, but obviously as a swimmer, and just started running. I never had lessons to run or was taught how to run. I just went and ran. So I don't feel like it's a bad thing to actually strip it back and start from the basics again and really rebuild that run from the bottom up. During my time in Austria, I was pretty much having massage and not just soft tissue, but joint manipulation maybe, like more of a, like what an osteopath would do as well, so a real mix. And I was doing that pretty much every single day, just to make sure, again, nothing's tightening up in a weird way, keeping my body in good alignment, because all of this is new work, and at the same time, I haven't been doing anything, so my body's probably like, whoa, what the hell is going on? So having massage daily and doing the rehab work daily as well, which some of that's a very small amount of work. It might just be like foam rolling and mobility, and then some of the sessions are a bit more hard work, really working on that foot strength and stability, as well as like starting to build up some strength through maybe my soleus and calf muscle that actually, for someone who needs to run, they've got quite weak, and they probably weren't that weak, but having so much time off of training, using crutches, they've actually got quite weak, so we need to build that strength up again as well. So one of the things that makes doing these exercises a bit easier eventually when I come away from being in Austria is that they don't require a huge amount of equipment, so there's no excuse for me not doing them daily. I should be able to do them at home, and then going forward, I think they'll work quite nicely as like pre-run sessions as a good way to warm up properly. But again, we're quite a long way off of doing that, but I feel like that will probably be quite beneficial when I get to that point. Okay, thanks for watching this video with a bit more of an update of why this injury happened. Continue to follow on our channel, as we're going to be covering a couple more videos of my time in Austria, diving more into the injury, but also moving past that and looking to the future and starting to bring in some different types of training and exploring Austria a bit as well. So make sure to stay tuned, as those videos will be coming very soon. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe.
Probably not on a table that small.
Yeah, it's tiny.